What are you feeding your mind right now? If it's social media, are you tired of doom scrolling through the angry comment sections and political rants yet? What if you use that time to actually fix your marriage? Welcome to the free Married and Connected School community. It's like social media, but without the ads, without the judgment, and without the noise. Just real self-paced tools that get you out of that roommate phase starting today. Inside, you get an exact blueprint for a weekly State of the Union meeting with your spouse. We're cutting mental load, we're stopping miscommunications, and we're breaking that exhausting loop of doom argument once and for all. Plus, you get instant access to workshops on overcoming resentment and bringing the actual fun back into your marriage. We have a dedicated space just for guys jumping into Forging Fortitude. It's a 10-week intensive to help you step into your masculine leadership and become the husband and man that God called you to be. And for ladies joining Edifying Eden, we're stepping out of that controlling, nagging era into our soft, nurturing, feminine era, even if your husband hasn't taken the reins yet. Either way, you can take responsibility for your side of the street. Stop scrolling the internet and start investing in your home. The community is 100% free with options to purchase certain courses. Click the link in the show notes and join the Married and Connected School community today. I'll see you inside. Marriage isn't supposed to feel like roommates, but it doesn't have to feel like a war either. Hi, I'm Cameron Alaricky, certified marriage coach and a relationship expert. Every week on Married and Connected, I bring you real talk, hard truths, and practical tools you can start using right away. Whether you've been married 2 years or 42, this is where you'll find hope, encouragement, and steps that actually work. So let's make your marriage feel good again, starting right now. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the Married and Connected podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Alaricky. Today, I am so excited. We have Jamie Joy Campbell, who has been a Christian woman helping navigate divorce with integrity for over 20 years as a family law attorney. She is personally guiding hundreds of women through what she calls faith-aligned marital unwinding. And as a twice-divorced Christian and adult child of divorce herself, Joy understands firsthand the complex spiritual and practical challenges facing women who never even imagined that divorce could be part of their story. Joy combines legal expertise with theological understanding to show Christian women God is not this jerk who demands that they remain in a spiritually dead marriage, but a loving parent who walks with them toward wholeness and peace. Today's episode is so exciting. We are going to get into our experiences in divorce, what to look out for, red flags, green flags, common things that she has seen as a divorce attorney, as well as what we hope for ourselves and each other in marriage as we go along. So welcome, Joy. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Hey, listen, I am awesome today, and I'm really excited to be on your podcast. And I've got so much to share with your listeners. So,
Okay.
yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So start out just to give the listeners to kind of an idea of where we're going. You have a webinar coming up, right?
Yes, 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 yes. It's navigating divorce. And it's
Okay.
especially designed for, it says Christian women, but people of faith, I suggest who have been married for 10 plus years
Okay.
who are considering divorce.
Okay. Do you find, I know that the average is that people kind of wait until like 6, 7 years before they actually get help. But by then they're kind of at this fork in the road of like, are we actually going to get help or do we just go ahead and get divorced because we're too far gone? What do
Mhm.
you typically see in your practice?
Ooh, this is a good question. It's really my experience that I say marriages have what I call a half life.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
if they make it 10 years before they start filing for divorce, the marriage has been dying for the last 5.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
So if it takes them 20 years, it's been dying for the last 10. 3 has been dying for the last 18 months, right? So that's the theory
Okay.
on it.
All
And so
right.
what happens in my experience is divorce is really a result, I say. It's a result of one or both parties' hearts becoming hard against the other. So there's
Hmm.
no longer this oneness. Now,
Hmm.
I come from a faith background, which suggests that just because a person's heart has become hard doesn't mean that it can't be softened. It doesn't mean that the marriage can't be saved. Okay. But what happens is generally once one of the hearts has become hard, it
Hmm.
stays in that direction until
Hmm.
finally right? They reach out to speak to me about divorce. And so it's harder to say what the amount of time is, but I can confidently say if you look back, there's usually some incident that happened,
Yeah.
right, halfway through that got them to where they are.
Yeah. Do you find typically that it's that incident is that, well, we started having kids or somebody cheated, or is it always cheating, or is it something deeper than that?
Ooh, your questions are awesome. It's not always cheating. Cheating is often also just a symptom, it's just a result, right, of that heartbreak that already happened. The biggest cause of divorce, as far as I'm concerned, is unmet expectations.
Oh.
Okay.
It's
Imagine.
almost like you've listened to this podcast over and over and over. Like it's like we've experienced the exact same things. Weird.
Right, right,
So
right, right. It's the unmet expectations. And so what can happen is sometimes a person is looking outside the marriage for what they should be looking inside the marriage for, and that will cause a hardness of heart. They start thinking poorly of their spouse, thinking negatively of them. The opinion they have of them gets low. Sometimes someone will look outside the marriage, they'll come in, they're repentant, but the
yeah,
other spouse is unforgiving.
yeah,
And the hurt, right, becomes hard because of the unforgiveness.
yeah.
Sometimes one heart will become hard because it's protecting itself from abuse.
Mhm,
Sometimes a heart becomes hard because it was really a little annoyance that
mhm,
never got resolved. And then it grows and it gets harder and harder and it gets a callus on it.
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
all those things.
Is there anything that when couples come to you, like for me, when couples come to me, the first thing that I say when they walk in is everything that has happened before now has to die. And now you guys have to start rebuilding from the foundation up to create a new marriage. Because obviously, if what you had before was working, your marriage wouldn't be in this place, right? So, is there anything that you say over and over and over until you repeat it in your sleep to clients?
Yes. The thing that I say the most when people call me and they say they want a divorce,
Mhm.
I say, that's not really what you want. Divorce is really just a legal piece of paper. What you want is to not be living with your spouse anymore. When you wake up in the morning, you don't want to see them. When you go to sleep at night, you don't want it to be with them. When you're making plans for meals, you don't want to think about them. So,
Right?
really, you don't need a divorce. You need to separate. You need to
Mhm.
physically separate, establish separate households. That really is the first step. And I have to tell people this all the time because once you separate from your spouse, some marriages do reconcile.
That's what happened with my
They,
second marriage.
right? They needed that time apart. Sometimes the time apart will allow you to realize, wow, it was really awful in there.
Yeah.
I'm so much better. I have so much energy now that I'm not with this person. And now
Yeah.
you can be reasonable and make decisions and plans. So, my
Yeah.
number one advice is you don't need a divorce, you need to separate.
Okay. And what so when I tell people to separate, it's usually for 6 months, 4 to 6 months. Is that about the same time you say as well?
This is very interesting because, yes, what I say to people is, especially if you're thinking about divorce, I say, stop thinking about divorce, right? What you want to do is recreate your family in a healthy way.
Mhm.
And if you and your spouse being in the house together is not healthy, let's find a way to recreate it in a healthy way. I suggest living separate and apart for 6 months to a year
Okay.
before you consider any kind of legal process if you can avoid it. Because you want to see what will it be like to co-parent from two different households.
Yeah.
How finances look now that we are separate. And as much of that as you can handle on your own without lawyers and without court intervention, the better. So
Yeah,
I think 6 months to a year.
for sure. I love that. I love that. And I'm so glad that you brought up like the finances and the co-parenting. What are the top 5 things you think that we know because we've either been divorced or like you deal with this every day, all day long. What are the top 5 things that people go in, like myths, if you will, when you go into divorce, you think it's going to be this way and it's actually not, or like you don't think about this part at all?
Mm, good lead in. So, at Christian Family Law, we specifically have a 5-step process, which we can call the faith aligned marital unwinding. Because the idea is when you become married, you're married really in 5 different areas, 5 different places you become one.
Okay.
So the first myth that we're always debunking is the idea that God hates divorce and that
Yeah.
there's no good reason to get a divorce and that you are breaking some kind of covenant by doing it. So
Right.
getting people to that first place of spiritual reconciliation and debunking the myth that there's no good reason to get a divorce is the first one,
Okay.
right? The second is the fact that you are one physically, right? Which does mean that we live in a house together and all of those things that we've accumulated in the house together are now our belongings together.
Yep.
Somehow, people seem to believe that they can be living in the house with their spouse, I don't know, 10, 15 years, gathering things, that they're going to go to court and get divorced. And then magically, all those things are going to be divided up.
50-50 even.
Right. And that is quite frankly not what happens at court. And so
No.
bunking the idea that you can go to court and get help with this minutia, that's not how that works. These are things you have to handle on your own. The
Mhm.
third issue is you are one financially.
Mhm.
And to get people to understand that because you're getting divorced doesn't mean you have any more money. So it's now the same amount of money that used to support your family in one household now has to support your family in 2 different
Yeah.
households. Something is going to have to change. And
A
so to
lot of
get
things are gonna have to change.
right. And to
Your
get the
entire lifestyle is going to change.
and it has to, right? Because
Yeah.
the money multiplied, the bills just did. Right?
Yeah.
The fourth area of oneness is what I call emotional, and a lot of that is identity based, right? So
Mhm.
we're someone's parents, we're someone's grandparents. Do we have positions at our church? Just different identity things that are related. And that is why divorces end up costing, multiple tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking, 40 to 60, 40,000 to $100,000 divorces are
Mhm.
because people are stuck in that phase. And
Yeah.
again, something the court can't help you with. This is something you
Yeah.
have to kind of work out on your own in community.
Yeah.
Redefine what it means to be a parent if we're not living together. Redefining this relationship with your spouse if we're still not married, but we still have to do all these things together, right? So just
Mhm.
processing all of that and grieving it,
Yeah.
grieving death of the marriage. Because people, even if they're the one who's filing the divorce or they're the one that's initiating the divorce, you still, the grieving process happens, right? And
Yeah.
everyone grieves the divorce, but at different times. Some people grieve it. I've been grieving the divorce maybe for 5 years already, right?
Mhm.
Grieving the marriage for 5 years before I reach out to the lawyer. The
Yeah.
other person maybe doesn't even begin the grieving process until you move out.
Yeah.
Now you got a 5-year head start on them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
That's true.
right, your spouse isn't where you are. You've been thinking this through for 5 years. So I want something that's just fair and reasonable.
Mhm.
The other person is like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean? Ah," right? And they're not ready to be fair and reasonable. And it's not
Yeah.
fair you to expect that of them.
That's absolutely true.
No? And then the final thing is finally the legal divorce, which is the paperwork and what you're going to get from the court. And what I try to tell people is that the court is not going to tell you how things should be.
Mhm.
Ideally, we want the paperwork to write down how things are going,
Yes.
right? So that it's not prospective and we're not trying to make up how I want things to be, but instead we're writing down how things actually are. So those are the
Yeah.
5 things.
I'm really glad that you brought up a couple of these points because this is what I see the most as well is that the reality of what is to come after the divorce, like going back to the expectations, right? It's no different in divorce than what it is in marriage. You still have expectations about how your parent is going to co-parent with, or how your spouse or ex-spouse now is going to co-parent with you. You still have these expectations of what your lifestyle is going to look like, and are they going to show up on Tuesday for their parenting time, and are you going to get help financially or physically, and that the happiness that comes with it. We get into marriage because we want to be happy. We get out of marriage because we want to be happy. And happiness is an inside job. Like, we just don't focus on that enough. As much as we want to blame our partner, those three, for every one finger pointing at them, there needs to be three pointing back at us. And we're just not ready for that conversation. But there's two really important points that you brought up that I want to get into, and that is the legal divorce. The court is not going to tell you how things should be. And what the court is not going to tell you is, when we get married, no, if you don't have premarital counseling or coaching or anything like that, nobody says, all right, so here's what you can expect from your marriage. And dollars to donuts, that's what's going to happen. Divorce is the same way. You get into the divorce and it's okay, these are the things that are going to happen, but nobody prepares you for what you said, the grieving the death of the marriage. When you grieve the death of that marriage, you are grieving the death of your identity in it, the reality of the fantasy that you thought your life was going to look like for the next X amount of years, the way that your children are going to respond. And it's harder to grieve. I've had a lot of physical death in my life, and I will say, bar none, it is more emotionally difficult to grieve the death of someone who is still alive than it is to grieve someone that has actually physically died. It is
100%.
so much harder, and nobody prepares you for that part. I think that's a lot of what fuels my mission to help couples. And, like you said, and on that faith-based journey, there's just so much to it. I mean, there's a reason that the Bible gives you a straight up instruction manual on not only how to live life, but also how to do marriage. That hardness of heart it drives me nuts that it says irreconcilable differences, because, like, that's not a thing. You really just need to say, well, I wasn't willing to forgive, or, well, I wasn't willing to put in the work. So
Mhm. No,
it's
it's
it
hard. It's a hard thing. And as you're saying this, so I am also twice divorced,
okay.
and I've been practicing divorce law for over, geez, about 25 years now. Yikes.
Yeah.
Um, when I first began practicing divorce, I had never been married. The only thing
Mm,
I knew about divorce was that I didn't want to do it because my parents got divorced, and that was all I knew is I didn't want
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And I started working with victims of domestic violence, getting them protection orders and, protection from violence orders from their spouses. And then I thought, well, these ladies need divorces, they,
Yeah.
right? And so I could kind of see that. Then I married and
Mhm.
my husband left me.
Mhm.
My first husband left me shortly before our third anniversary. And I really truly believe that I have been doing everything right in that marriage. I'm praying for him. I'm not nagging. We're going to the couples Bible study together, all of these things. Ultimately, he left me for his boyfriend, which is its
Oh.
own special drama.
Mhm.
And I learned then that divorce can happen to you.
Yeah.
It didn't matter all that I did. And grieving that was really hard. I remember being at a women's conference and the widows, they were praying for the widows. And
Mhm.
I was like, that really is kind of how I feel, right? Like,
Mhm.
because just the grief of how he left me and all of what I thought we were going to have that we didn't
Yeah.
have, it really made
Yeah.
me, yeah, made me feel like a widow.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. So I'm going to kind of use your story a little bit.
Yeah.
Red flags. How often do you have spouses come into your office and say, I want a divorce. I heard a statistic one time that 95% of people who get divorced knew before the wedding that it was going to happen. And in my first marriage, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it is true. There were with my first husband, there were plenty of signs that I
Mhm.
was ignoring, and that's what
Yep.
I tell people. You cannot know anything you don't want to know. You don't want to know it.
That's so true. You
Cannot.
cannot know anything you don't want to know.
Mhm. Right? It
So
was
true.
rough. Right? And I planned this beautiful wedding for us. To this day, the best party I've ever thrown. It's like
Sure.
75 people. We went to Jamaica, was on a private island, all dressed in white. In my own prayer journal the night before, I wrote, and I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't gone back to read it. I'm settling, but it's too late to turn back now.
Oh, yep. Yep. Mine was, I know this isn't right and I know it's going to end in divorce, but my parents have already paid for so many things and they've wasted it would be a waste of their money.
Pretty much. Wow. Right?
Mhm. And then they paid for my divorce. So, I mean,
Thanks, mom.
that was even more wasted money.
It's so hard, but it's
It
hard to know at
is.
that time, like we hope.
Mhm.
And with my second husband, so after the first divorce, I was single for a while. The second husband, it was a weird thing, but like I'm a lawyer. He's an electrician, but like blue collar. And I started selling this kind of dream to the world about, oh, the second marriage can be so much better. There's life,
Mhm. Mhm.
divorce. A professional woman can date this kind of man. Like there was all of this story that I felt like I was building for the world, and then he got me pregnant kind of early. uh, Right. And
Mhm.
so it's like I felt committed to following it through.
Yeah.
So I knew this wasn't best for me. I guess I believe that if I keep hoping, maybe eventually God will bless this mess. Like maybe I can force God to bless
Mm.
this mess by getting married.
Mhm. That free will, it'll bite you every time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've ignored the red flags, we've created fantasies, we've sold the lie to the entire world, but mostly to ourselves, of what it's going to look like. And then it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
Before people come to you, what do they need to think about, or what do they need to have in order to be able to walk away? So for me, in my first marriage, I stayed 4 extra years than I should have because I wanted to know that I had done every single thing that I possibly could to save the marriage. So I went to therapy every Thursday at 4 o'clock. For 4 years, I invited him every Wednesday for all 4 years. Did, like you said, didn't nag, didn't do this, didn't do that, like made sure I was bettering myself, all the things. And ultimately, it didn't matter. So, what would you say is your advice of like, make sure you've done these things before you make that final decision?
Very good. What you did is really key. There is a story about doctors, right? So after a person has coded, a lot of times the doctor will continue to do like CPR and the heart compressions for minutes afterwards, even
Yeah.
after it's clear that this person is dead. And someone asked the doctor, why do you do that? And the doctor says, so when the family asks me, I can say, I did all that I could do.
Yeah.
I can say that honestly. And that is the same advice, right? For someone that's in a marriage. You do want to know that you have done all that you could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's number
As a
one.
child, as a
Mhm.
child of divorce, and now seeing so many divorces, having gone through it yourself, how do you think your parents' divorce played a role in, or other, even clients that you have, their parents' divorces? How do you think that plays a role in adulthood and in your relationships?
So, one big thing I know from having experienced wanting to not be divorced,
Mhm.
right? Just that thing that kept me in marriages maybe longer than I should have been because I was so just committed to being doing better than my parents, committed to
Mm.
not like them. That
Mhm.
made me stay maybe longer in the marriage than I should, right? So that's a big thing I see. Um,
Yeah.
it kind of goes across the board where people are committed to having this two-parent household because either it's what they did know or what they didn't know, either way. But that
Yeah.
commitment, right, to providing that for their children, even when it's not necessarily what's best for them or ultimately the children, plays
Yeah.
out, I think, in these marriages. What I think people would expect to see is, oh, my parents got divorced, so I don't really believe in marriage, so I'm willing to jump out of this too.
Yeah.
But that has not been my experience. It's been my experience that the people from divorced parents are wanting to do better. They're wanting to stay longer. They're wanting to make it work.
Yeah.
And it's unfair because they don't really know why their parents got divorced
Yeah.
and end up repeating the same pattern subconsciously.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's we talk about that all the time is that you will repeat generational patterns because that's what you see. It's a product you are a product of your experience, your education, and your exposures. Well, if that's all you've ever known, and also I think it plays into the stigma of wanting to get help. People don't want to get help because we should just know how to do marriage. But if that's all you ever saw growing up, how will you know? How do you know what a healthy relationship looks like? How do you know what making it work looks like? How do you know when to look at yourself versus looking at your partner and having healthy conversations? I mean, how do you know what any of that looks like? How do
Right?
you
No,
know what parenting looks like? You don't. You don't know any of that.
you're making it up. My dad told the story, which I think is pretty cool. What he remembers growing up is
Mhm.
that his father on payday would go out drinking, and
Oh.
then he'd come home. His mother would
Mhm.
be angry because he'd
Mhm.
bring the money home. Then there'd
Yeah.
be a fight, and there was just
Okay.
this. It was a nasty and a bad experience. And
Okay.
so he knew when I get married, I'm always going to bring the paycheck home. That was his big
Okay.
thing
Okay.
because it's what a good husband would do. A good husband
Mm.
always bring the paycheck home. And so he always
Mhm.
brought the paycheck home and didn't understand why my mother was unhappy. And she says, because there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, you can't just being a provider isn't just financially providing.
Mhm.
But those are the stories we tell ourselves, and this is the thing is that I tell my clients all the time, you're making something mean what it doesn't mean. But you're making it mean something based on your own trauma-induced self-beliefs, your own filters, your own emotions, your own, all of those things. And so even when your partner says something to you, you make it mean something that it might not necessarily mean. So,
Yes. Yes. And so, look, and let's offer this. So, the advice that I give people that are getting married,
mhm.
right, it's kind of precisely that. You and your spouse are both getting like you're getting married because there's something about marriage you want, right? Like you discussed, you think this marriage is going to make you happy. Maybe you want a partner, maybe you want a future, whatever it is. But there's something attractive that's making you get married. The same is true for your spouse, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
That's true.
So you have a script in your mind of how this is supposed to look. And they also have a script and they're not the same. And so
At all.
they start doing things that are off script. Now your expectations aren't met,
Yep.
right? And this is the beginning of the rift. And it's not that anybody's wrong. You're just not on the same playbook. And so it's just important to remember that and have those conversations all along the way, especially while you're dating and getting married and early in the marriage, right? To really be clear as much as you can about what it is you want. Why are you doing this? And getting their perspective too. And remembering that you're not necessarily wrong. They're just
Right.
different, right? Because this is what they're coming from. This is what you're coming from. And marriages can work even when people are coming from different places if we talk about it, if we're honest with ourselves and with one another, and we're not expecting them to magically fall into a script that they've never read,
Mhm.
not expecting them to do things exactly like we fantasize them to be, because again, it's just a fantasy. There's no
Yeah.
reality to it.
Well, and if you're willing to continue having those conversations, and if you're willing to let your ego get out of the way and stop driving the car, because when I mean, that's the whole reason that we start fighting, is that we want to prove how right we really are. But the reason that it's important to continue having those conversations, I mean, it's just like having kids. How many of us said before we had kids, oh, my kid's never going to watch screens, and they're only going to eat organic food, and we're never going to feed them fast food. And 3 years later, and they're sitting in the back of the car eating McDonald's and Cheetos, with an iPad on their lap, like, just so that you can have 3 minutes of peace and quiet.
Yep.
Things change,
Yeah.
and it's the same in marriage. So you have to continue having those conversations of, okay, I know we said this. Does
Mhm.
that still apply? If not, has the circumstance changed? How are we going to change with the circumstance? If this happens, how are we going to pivot? All of those conversations are really important.
They are super important. And that's one of the reasons, too, I suggest just on the financial end, a prenuptial agreement.
That was my next question, is what your thoughts on prenups and postnups are.
Just prenups, because preparing a prenuptial agreement is like writing a business plan, right? People tell you, oh, if you want to get funding from a bank, you need to have this business plan.
Right.
And if you don't want funding from a bank, you need a business plan, because taking the time to actually think about all of these elements and look at them and write them down is valuable in itself. It's the same thing with the prenup. It's not necessarily that we have these big, huge estates or assets that we're trying to protect. Maybe I'm coming in with nothing and you're coming in with nothing. Everything we build together will be marital. But let's
Right.
talk. Would I want to donate money? Are you a saver? Are you a spender? Are you the kind of person that feels like you need to be giving money to your family? Like, just different things that we really need to talk about with money. Like, what is your credit score? What is your earning ability? Like, let's have the conversations. And I think that's really what's key to the prenup, even more so, right, than divorce preparation, but having the conversation about money.
I'm glad you said that about the divorce preparation, because I think a lot of people go into it thinking that if you have a prenup, that's basically you having a plan B in place, and you already know that a divorce is inevitable.
Mhm. And I say no. It really is building a plan. It's things to think about. I like having the conversation with people. Um, Prenups, I think, are most important when one person, like, is a part of a family business or something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. That's when prenups are really needed, because maybe the family is trying to protect the family aspect of it,
Sure.
and
Which completely makes sense.
marry in to change anything. That's what happened to the House of Gucci, but that's another story too. But so that's when those conversations come up, and they're super important. Like, what does your family own? When will those things that are your separate property, when
Mhm.
will they become marital? Is it your
Yeah.
intention that anything that comes from there never becomes marital? Like, how are we going to work this out? And those are things that you should talk about.
Yeah. For sure. Because that may be a deal breaker. That makes sense. So what about postnups? What are your thoughts on postnups?
Post-nups, look, post-nups, I do kinda feel like our divorce planning. Post-nups, I do kinda feel like our divorce planning, but it's the idea. It is the same, conversation. If, say, we didn't maybe it's a post-nup because I didn't want my spouse to feel pressured, right? Maybe we didn't have enough time before the marriage to do it, and instead of pressuring them into it, let's wait until, after the marriage and things are settled down, and let's do the postnup. I respect that, right? Because it's the same conversation, it's the same idea.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we've been married for a while, and now all of a sudden I want to start deciding what's my separate property. You're planning for divorce.
You're planning for it. Yeah. 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 Okay, as we wrap up, is there anything that you want our listeners to know or to think about?
Ooh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
That I want you to think about is this. Marriage still works. Marriage works. It is something to believe in. And it is our position that healthy marriages don't end in divorce.
Mhm.
Full marriages are diamonds and they should be treated as such.
Agree.
Marriages that are breaking you down, that are not building you, that are not making you closer to God are not diamonds. They're glass. And glass should not be treated like a diamond. And that's why divorces are appropriate. God did not put everyone together.
That's
Sometimes
true.
we do it ourselves. And we
Yeah.
cannot just make God turn this glass into a diamond,
Mhm.
you know? And similarly, a diamond is still a diamond, even if it's dirty, even if it's got a chip in it.
Yep.
It needs
Yeah.
its right. It's still a diamond. And so marriages are valuable. Glass is not. We have to be
That's
able
true.
to see the difference.
How would you tell people or how would you teach people to see that though? To see the difference?
Mm. So a big thing that I tell people is to pray, honestly. Pray.
Mhm.
Pray genuinely for your spouse and for your marriage. And there's only one of two things that are going to happen. The marriage is going to strengthen or you're going to run that other person away.
That's true.
Facts. Yeah.
That's true. It is. And couples who pray together have less than a 1% chance of divorce.
Look at
So,
that.
it's I mean, obviously there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Therefore.
Okay. So tell us about this webinar. When is it? How do
Oh,
people register?
oh, good questions. All right. So you can get to the webinar at my website, christianfamilylaw.com/webinar. You get in pretty easy. It just asks for your name and your email. I'm going to start asking for phone numbers, but I'm not yet. Then you'll get an email with the link in it right to the webinar. And it goes over the faith aligned marital unwinding, those 5 areas of oneness I touched on. And I personally think it's an extremely valuable lesson and no cost to you.
And what is the date for this?
Oh, no, it's ongoing. Thanks for that.
Oh, it's
No,
ongoing. Okay.
it's there, right? I recorded it. It's not live right now.
Love
Mm-mm.
it. Love it. That's awesome. Okay. So they can check that out at your website. I will get all of those links in the show notes. And then do you have social media or anything where people can get more information from you or just be following you in the background?
Yes, and I wish I was better at this, but I'm generally Christian Family Law everywhere. So I'm at
Okay.
Facebook, we're Christian Family Law for my business page. Instagram, I think I'm Divorce Clarity Coach. Um, YouTube, I'm at Christian Family Law.
Okay.
LinkedIn also too, Christian Family Law.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. So much good information for people to think about for sure. I'm so glad you and I share so many of the same. And honestly, I think this is about and I think this goes back to our faith is that because we have such strong faith in Christ, we believe that marriage works because he says it does. And because even though both of us have been divorced twice, we still see the beauty and the value and that diamond in what marriage can bring. So I love that. I love that. I will get all of the links in the show notes and people can follow you there. They can sign up and watch your webinar and hopefully we'll be able to have you back on soon.
I'd love to come back.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
We've all seen it. The messy social media messages, the public tea spilling, and the absolute embarrassment of finding out that your life is a lie through a Facebook post or an Instagram message that your spouse thought was hidden. What if it didn't have to be like that, though? What if you could find out before their affair got too deep? Statistics show that over 20% of marriages deal with infidelity, and most affairs last for years because they thrive in the dark. It's time to turn the lights on. Verified.com is the world's first searchable relationship registry. It's not just an app, It's a digital boundary for your marriage. When you register your spouse on verified, you are claiming your relationship on a global scale, whether you're talking, you're dating, or you're married. If another man or woman is being told your spouse is single or divorced and they search for your spouse on the registry, they find you instead. Now, here's the game changer. Verified allows you to speak one-on-one and directly with that other person. No gaslighting from your spouse. No he said, she said. No, oh my God, you went through my phone. How could you betray my trust like that? And zero social media drama. Just the truth, person to person, before things go too far. Don't wait for that gut feeling to become a nightmare. Because even if you think your spouse would never, there's an even better chance that you just never know. Register your spouse today using the link in the show notes and lock in your legacy to protect your peace. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional counseling or therapy. Every couple story is unique, so take what's helpful and leave the rest. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that neither I, Cameron Thompson Alaricki, Married and Connected, or Recognizing Potential Coaching are responsible for any outcomes related to what you apply from this show, especially if you are not a client of mine.